progress and your involvement go together. If you're not doing much work, then you're not going to benefit the same as somebody who's doing this on a day-by-day basis. Here's the example that comes to me from seminary. When I was learning Greek, people would know that every Wednesday at a set time, we're going to meet together and we're going to go through the Greek that we've been learning over the last week and do the next lecture. What happened inevitably was that on Tuesday afternoon, people would pick up their Greek grammar and they would start working on the material that they needed to go through, and they would wonder why it was so hard. And the answer is because they weren't working on it on a regular basis. You need to be more invested than an hour on a Tuesday afternoon before your Wednesday call. So it needs to be with Greek as well. Through any program you're working on, you need to be working on this more regularly. Recently I asked what sort of things have been discouraging or holding you back in your quest to learn Greek, and got some really good answers. And in this video I'm going to share some basic encouragement that I hope will help you if you are struggling to learn Greek, be it in seminary or even BMA or somewhere else. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Daryl Burling from Biblical Mastery Academy, here to help you with the tools, habits, and system to master the Greek of the New Testament. And today we're focusing really on the habits that are necessary to learn Greek. Now, I've talked about this on this channel before, so probably not a lot of this is going to be new, but you always like to think it's going to be a little bit fresh and new compared to perhaps what it was last time. In this video, I'm going to talk about 3 different stages that you could find yourself at, be it beginning Greek, be it later on when you're learning more vocabulary and you're learning to read new books of the Bible, or be it just general tips. So let's start with those general tips. These are tips that you really are going to want to sort of have at hand on a regular kind of basis. And here's where it starts. Basically, the more involved you are with the learning of the language, the more you're going to benefit from the process, the more likely you are to actually make significant progress. The more you invest of yourself, of your time, even of your money and resources, and of even opportunity, the more you're going to benefit. And this comes out in a couple of ways, particularly in BMA, where we have a whole bunch of different opportunities, be it office hours calls, Greek workshop calls, cohorts and courses, and so on. We really want to encourage you, as you have opportunity, to join as many of those as you possibly can. Now, you can't join everything, nor should you join everything. But what I encourage, if you're in the beginning Greek stage, you want to probably join a cohort so you're working with others, and you want to try and make live appearances on those calls if you can. Again, it may be inconvenient, it may not always work for you, but if you're on those calls, there's a greater chance that you're actually going to be successful because they're going to push you along. They're going to encourage you to take key steps. And I know sometimes you get behind, things happen, you're not able to continue, but then we have new cohorts starting. So just jump into one of those other cohorts. I'd also encourage, if you're in that beginning Greek phase, to join us on our office hours calls. We have these twice a week, and I want to encourage you to just be part of those calls, ask questions, talk about them, and so on. And if you're in seminary, these are the sorts of things you want to bring to a class. Ask questions, just be in a class with other people. We're trying to bring that to the online world as well, with a variety of different options and capabilities. As you go on, join our workshop calls where we actually read Greek texts from the Septuagint, the Apostolic Fathers, and the New Testament. Again, these are going to drive you forward in your knowledge of the language and get you into texts that you wouldn't normally otherwise get into. So the key thing here is that the more involved you are, the more invested you are in the process of learning Greek, the more you're going to get out of it and the more you're going to benefit from your engagement with it. So progress and your involvement go together. If you're not doing much work, then you're not going to benefit the same as somebody who's doing this on a day-by-day basis. And that leads to the subject of habits. Habitual use and work in the language is going to lead to increased skill. If you're not spending the time in the language, you shouldn't expect to develop in your skill with the language. The amount of time you invest in the language is going to be directly reflected in the amount of progress you make with the language. And here's the thing, each of us has what's called agency. Now, there is a sense in which you might think, well, I don't have any time. Well, that's a victim mindset. Let me just argue against that. One of the things, there's no such thing as time management because we can't manage time, but we can manage our use of the time. In fact, it's one of the very few things that we actually have direct control over. So how you do manage your time is critical. You actually have agency. In fact, no more than that. You have responsibility to use your time well. And if Greek and learning to read the New Testament in the original language or Hebrew in the Old Testament is important to you for whatever reason, then that should be reflected in the time that you set aside to develop the skill with this language. And so to make this actually work, you want to make working with the language normal. Now, you can have, you're going to have abnormal days that are not normal, right? Days that aren't quite the same every week or whatever. But for the most part, you want to give yourself a time every day or, regularly so that there's a normal part of your day that is taken up with Greek. And it may not be the same time every day. The point is that every day it is normal for you to spend some time in Greek. And it's abnormal for you to not spend time in Greek. Now, there's a number of tasks you're going to want to do with that normal time. But the fact is that if every day, if it is normal for you to spend time in your Greek every day, then you're going to make some great progress. If it is abnormal for you to spend time in Greek, well, guess what? You should expect those results to look like that abnormality rather than looking like the normal time that you're setting aside. So put aside time every day. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time, nor do you have to have huge goals. If this week I'm going to get through 4 chapters of Beginning with New Testament Greek, or 6 lessons in Beginning Greek in Small Steps, or 3 chapters of Mounts, or whatever, those are huge goals. Start small, set small goals, set a goal for one day. Today, I'm going to do this one thing, and then focus on doing that. Set micro goals. And then once you do that micro goal, set another micro goal for the next day. And just keep making that small 1% improvement every day. That's normal. If that's normal for you, you can expect great progress. And again, this is why I keep saying small, consistent steps. If you're taking small steps on a consistent basis, you should expect to get a long way over time. Think of it like walking from home to work. I don't know how far away that is. However long away work is from home, if you're going to walk from work to home, however long that is, if you take one step at a time, you're going to get there. It might take longer or shorter depending on how far away it is, but it's that each individual step is that path, if you like, that process it's going to take to get you to your destination. And so it is with Greek. Set small goals on a regular basis and take those steps, and you'll find that you will get where you're trying to go. So with that, plan for Greek to be a normal part of your day. Let's talk about emotions. Let's talk about that feeling we have during the beginning Greek phase in particular, where I feel like I suck at this. I feel like I don't really get it. I feel like I don't have the confidence. I feel. Feelings are something that tell us a little bit about what's going on inside, but they're not the full story. Now, the problem is when we go to believing that those feelings are the full story, then we start to live our life based on those feelings, and we can't do that. If you live your life based on your feelings, you're going to end up in a bit of a mess, frankly. As a biblical counselor, I can tell you that typically we say to people, if you're living based on your feelings and your feelings are all over the place, your life will also be all over the place. We are intended by God to live based on principles, live based on how He describes Himself and His world to be. And then the feelings follow out of those principled decisions and steps that we take on a day-by-day basis. So it is too with beginning Greek. During that beginning Greek phase, you are going to feel a lack of confidence, and that is normal. Everybody feels that way. Why? Here's the reason why. Those feelings come with challenges. Whenever you are challenged by something, you're going to feel just a little bit out of your depth. You're going to feel just a little bit like you don't actually know what you're doing. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel a lack of confidence. You're going to feel a certain way. And that's because you're being challenged to move forward. And while you're in beginning Greek in particular, but really through the entire journey, you should expect to find there's going to be a whole pile of challenges, because those challenges are there to take you from where you are to where you're trying to go. Now, ultimately, the where you're trying to go is to read the New Testament in the original language, but let's just focus on shorter term. To get from where you are to finishing beginning Greek and having those basic skills, you're going to have to be challenged step by step as you go to get to that end goal. If you're not challenged, it means you already know the answers. You already are comfortable with this. And that's just not reasonable. There should be a level of discomfort that comes as you integrate and get into each of these new lessons and pieces of the Greek process. So the nature of these challenges is to push you to grow. And the reason you feel inadequate for these things is because you haven't completed these challenges yet. So here's what I want you to try doing. If you've already completed a number of lessons, go back maybe 2 lessons to what you've already done. And what you're going to find there is that those things that were challenging 2 lessons ago, you've actually finished those challenges now, and now you're facing new challenges. Well, in 2 lessons time, you're going to look back at these challenges and feel like, well, I've overcome those. But every week you're going to get new challenges, and you should expect to allow those challenges to push you to grow, because that's why they're there. And you've already conquered challenges in the past, so there's nothing to say you can't conquer this one as well. In fact, if you've conquered previous challenges, even if it's just the alphabet, you know you can conquer this one as well, because there are people who give up at the alphabet. If you've gone past the alphabet, then you're already in a good space and you've already overcome some of those challenges that other people have given up on. So if you've made it through some challenges, you can probably make it through this one as well. If there's things you need, then let us know. We're here to help you and we want to be a blessing to you as you go through that. And the same will be for your professor if you're in seminary. Let them know how they can help you and they will be happy to clarify things for you as well. But reach out and get help. If you're struggling with something, it may not just be you. There may need to be a little bit of extra work there to help you understand things. And certainly if you're in the BMA Greek Mastery membership, certainly I want to know about those things so I can go back and fix them and make things clear. I got an email this morning from somebody who found something hard in the alphabet, and it was already on my to-do list to re-record that section anyway. So I'm going to take all that feedback and incorporate that in. And that's what we do. We want to make this easier for you. So let someone know and they can help you and make it easier for you. And as you look backwards and you see that you've conquered these things already, don't forget to give thanks. You've come such a long way. The Lord has been gracious to you and faithful in helping you to learn and overcome those challenges, and He will continue to be faithful as you face the current challenges with the language as well. Keep taking small, consistent steps, and you will know you will get through these current challenges. But don't let those feelings hold you back. Those feelings are just an indicator that you are being pushed to learn new things, to develop new skills. Now, perhaps you're someone who's already finished beginning Greek and you're starting to translate and learn to read books of the Bible book by book. Well, let me encourage you to learn book by book, learn the vocabulary book by book. And if you need help on that, take a look at bma.to/GVT, this link here. That will take you to our Greek vocab pack. And what we do in there is we give you all the vocabulary that occur 50 times or less, or at least less than 50 times for the entire New Testament, starting from the easiest books and going all the way through to the hardest books. It's a one-off price. You only pay for it once. There's no membership fees or subscriptions or anything like that. But you can then learn to read the New Testament book by book, starting from the easiest books like 1 John and finishing with the hardest ones like Luke and Acts. And what you'll do is you'll learn the vocabulary for, say, 1 John, and then read 1 John. And that's really a great way of reading through the entire New Testament. But let me just make a comment here. If that's the approach you are taking, don't expect to just read through that text. For instance, let's say you've learned the vocabulary for 1 John chapter 1. Don't just expect to pick up 1 John chapter 1, read it through like you read English, and move on. In fact, you're not going to do that. It's very likely you're going to need to take a few days to read just slowly through 1 John chapter 1. And that's okay. So let's just say we spend half an hour and we read just 5 verses. 1 John 1, 1 to 5. And then the next day we spend half an hour and we read the next 5 verses. Well, here's my encouragement. The next day, start again. Go back to 1 John 1. And the first verse of it and start reading through. Spend half an hour again. You'll probably find you'll get further that second time round in that 30 minutes than you did the first time. But read again, just read 5 verses. Read the whole lot perhaps. It doesn't really matter how much. But here's the thing. Read it, reread it, and reread it again. In fact, I would encourage you to read it 3 or even 4 times during that first week before you move on to 1 John chapter 2. What this allows you to do is to actually learn to read it the first time, get all the words, understand them, work out how they're passed, do that passing work if you need to do that. And then the second time you start to internalize some of those elements so that you no longer need to look this word up or pass that word. You can see what it's doing in its context, and therefore you can remember and recall what that's doing. And the next day, you do the same thing again, this time perhaps with even more text. Maybe you read all 10 verses of 1 John 1, and then do the same thing again. And you'll find that each time you reread this text, it gets easier and you get faster. And you get better at reading and you get more confident, which means that when you come to the next chapter, you're going to be better off for it anyway. And again, the more time you spend reading and rereading, the more confidence and capability and competence you're going to develop with the language. So that would be my encouragement if you're through beginning Greek. Read and reread and reread, learn the vocabulary and read, and then go on to some new vocabulary. While you're reading that text, be learning the vocabulary for the next one. And again, that's how the Greek vocab pack is structured, so that you can learn the vocabulary, and then when you come to that text, you already know all the words. You don't have to go look them up. And if you do have to look them up, it's only because there's something weird, like a second aorist, or there's some strange morphological thing going on. And again, you can look that up the first time you read it. Second time, well, you know that, and you can just read it as it's natural, okay? Another thing, if you are through beginning Greek, consider switching your primary Bible from English to Greek. Now, I know that might seem to be a bit of a stretch, particularly if you're only reading, say, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and maybe that's not quite the time to do it. Maybe you want to have conquered a few more books. Maybe you want to have done milestone 1, which is equivalent to, for us, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, 2nd Thessalonians, Philemon, 1st Thessalonians, and Colossians. And if you've read those books, you're in a pretty good position to be able to pick up a lot of the New Testament. You've learned a lot of the words that occur 20 times or more in the Greek New Testament at that stage, and you're in a good position to pick up your Bible in most places and be able to read. So why not actually make your Greek New Testament your primary Bible? You can do this easily in Logos by setting Logos up as, by changing the preference so your Greek New Testament is first, and then you can just use that. And if you need to, fall back to a secondary resource like an English translation or something like that. But I would also say, even though I'm not a huge fan of reader's editions, I would recommend this would be the time where you'd want to use a reader's edition. And here's the goal. You're trying to push yourself, force yourself to spend more time in the Greek by making that your default translation or your default text. So rather than actually going to English first, go to Greek first. Force yourself to do as much as you can there before you pick up an English translation or before you start to use the helps at the bottom of the page. The more you can immerse yourself in the language at this level, the better it's going to be for you. And of course, if you get texts and passages you've already learnt, well, try to read them fluently without having to stop and think through what those words are. Try and remember on the spot rather than actually looking at the bottom of the page to try and jog your memory, because that's going to get your recall going, that's going to get you greater competence, and that's going to allow those words and those meanings and morphology and all those kinds of things to be front of mind more readily. Finally, if you are through this phase, the vocabulary is going to be the biggest challenge, and I want to encourage you to work on your vocabulary daily. 2 to 3 times a day. Even though you've got 1,000 words to recall and to go through, it's not going to take you hours a day normally. I think when I was finishing the Greek New Testament, I was spending around about an hour a day reviewing vocabulary, broken into chunks throughout the day. But what I did was I replaced any social media time that I'd normally have with time reviewing vocabulary. And it paid dividends. Now I can read the entire New Testament without really too much trouble with vocabulary. And that would be the same for you as well. So spend time on your vocabulary. This is the biggest payoff once you're through beginning Greek, because the vocabulary is the biggest hold up to being able to read. If you don't know the words, you can't read. Know the words, you can read. And you can often work out the syntax because you can read as well, because you know those vocabulary words. So vocabulary is a huge focus after beginning Greek, and don't shortchange yourself on that. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's frustrating. But yes, this is also the main thing that unlocks your skills and ability as you progress. So those are some brief tips that I've got for you to help you to stay motivated and engaged and encouraged as you get into the task of learning Greek and reading Greek beyond that as well. Now, I know that many of you also have tips, and I'd love to hear your tips below as well. What's helped you in terms of learning and managing and reading more texts from the New Testament? Let us know in the comment section below. And if you are interested in learning Greek, we actually have a new beginning Greek course starting soon. So if you're interested, go to bma.to/get-started, and we'll get you started on our free Getting Started course, which will get you underway in as timely a manner as possible. So thanks so much for watching this video. It's been great to help and serve you. I hope this has been a blessing, and I look forward to seeing you and serving you in the next video. Until then, keep taking small, consistent steps. That's the normal. until you reach mastery. I'll see you in the next one.